When to recruit Marauder Hunters with Javelins. Indulge me. I want to go over a use case a lot of people may not even know exists. When to use javelins over throwing axes. That's because the throwing axes are solid and legit and nothing is wrong with them. But the javelins have a place and these do not exist in Chaos rosters at all. Why is this a real boost for Norsca then? Let's find out. Recruited for 500 gold and 138 upkeep is a 50 less recruitment cost, but identical upkeep, a balancing issue. This means it's easier to spam them into existence, but because you need an actual barracks building, tier 2 of the Marauder infantry building specifically, same tier as basic Bearmen with Sarl DLC, they're less available than regular hunters until that point. On Ultra scale, it's 90 entities with 6,030 health between them. Yet again, that entity number means their offensive potential is 50% higher than basic horsemen just on raw numbers alone, with, obviously, far less mobility. Leadership 50 isn't that great. Speed 35 and charge speed 43 are the Marauder standard, so that means they don't go any faster than regular Marauder infantry. Melee attack 26 is not hot garbage in principle, but it's still a full 10 less than the regular hunters with dual axes in melee. Attack interval 4.2 seconds and lack of splash damage are identical. Melee defense 22 is slightly better than original. Weapon strength 28 is split base 21 and armor piercing 7, as in they hit every bit as hard as swordsmen and bleak swords. Charge bonus of 8 is 4 less compared to regular hunters, and mass is 100. These aren't chameleon skink light. For ranged, ammunition begins at 12, as in, unlike the horsemen, no better than original. Not this part. Range 90 is 10 meters better than the throwing axes, and that's going to matter. They engage further away, and javelins seem to travel a bit faster. Nominal damage is 31 per javelin, split base 15, and armor piercing 7 per hit. The defining feature of the unit is the inherent bonus versus large of 15 that applies solely to damage. Assuming no change in how bonuses normally work, the jump from 22 to 37 damage total would follow the same base to AP ratio. Note that when combining base and AP, the throwing axes did 28 damage total. Here, they do less against infantry, substantially more against large. Like the original, reload time is 8 seconds, which is a faster deal than the horseman by default. Total accuracy is 20, calibration distance of 40 meters is not better, so at the extreme end of that range they'll be less accurate. Calibration area 2 meters is as tight as the axe unit, and therefore is tighter, somewhat, than the horsemen and the horse masters throwing javelins. There is a small penetration cap and a max of 2 targets skewered beyond the first. And that is going to matter for making up for the loss of the bonus when fighting infantry-sized entities, including fell bats and typical warhounds. Like others of its faction, the unit has rage, but you don't particularly want it in melee unless it's truly lopsided, like against Empire archers, and those are nimble and there is no firewheels moving here to use. Before moving forward, let's once again discuss Juggernaut of the Sarl. The melee bonus versus large plus 12 this provides in melee is not playing to this unit's strengths, but what happens with Worm Piercer ammo is that the bonus versus large goes from 15 to 25. This is not the hyper-dramatic leap it was with Horsemasters, but nonetheless, 25 is more than the base and the armor-piercing damage combined. So you do more than double the damage being done to infantry, going from 37 to 47 versus large, split along the same ratio. Now, 47 total is a lot of damage. Penetration is dependent on factors beyond your control, but typical skirmish cavalry are going to take one volley of this and either run voluntarily or break and flee. The limited range is a problem, sure, but armor piercing 15 is not that much below the 22 of the throwing axes, and the base damage of 32 is going to do devastating damage to something with 0 armor, like base Chaos Spawn. So, before we get into boosting this further, this is the main lesson. Throwing axes are better in melee and more consistent against high-end armor, and of course, Shield Breaker exists nowhere else here, so Shield Breaker helps hunters themselves, hunters with javelins, and any horsemen around. Javelins are better in terms of flexibility with the longer range, are entirely adequate against moderate armor infantry and below, but are dramatically more effective against medium armor or below cavalry and monsters, including single entities. In the Redline skills, 3 pips of Beast Slayers provides ammunition plus 20% and missile strength plus 8%. This is crucial because unlike basic horsemen or horsemasters, you're limited to 12 volleys default, though, of course, that's with 90 entities chucking. Hardened Hunters helps rank 7 and up veterans with missile strength plus 12%, reload time reduction 10%, and missile resistance plus 15%. So far so good, this tracks with the rest. In the tech tree, Chaos Surge returns for plus 1 recruit rank and plus 4 leadership. Completely unlike the Horseman, Axemaker's Stone gives ammunition plus 15% and missile strength plus 10%. Champions of War gives plus 5% casualty replenishment and, if rank 7 and above, plus 10% physical resistance, even before Rage blows them up. And yeah, melee is not ideal here, but they're less awful than an awful lot of other missile units. Something I was remiss about for the Horseman deep dive, because I was searching for cavalry in the tech tree. Devastation of the Dark Elves provides not just missile resistance 20% when fighting that race faction-wide, which is nice, but plus 4 armor-piercing missile damage for each and every missile thrown or chucked, be it throwing axes or javelins. Thanks to how bonus versus large works, increasing the AP to base damage ratio also makes the bonus increase the resulting armor piercing slightly, so this is nothing but a huge win for hunters with javelins. So, when should you recruit hunters with javelins? Before diving into that more, let's look how that missile tech lands. Instead of extra speed and reload time reduction, the javelins got more ammo and more damage. Combined with having 90 entities and tighter javelin groupings, this means you go to Horsemen and Horsemasters for speed and utility and front-loading damage, you go to the foot javelins to catch up on sustain, and for more overall damage. Once you reach this point, and that's not a late game tech, and it makes even non-redline boosted hunters nice and viable. You basically divvy up recruiting according to your needs, provided obviously that you can recruit javelins in the first place. You don't always have the option. If you are facing extremely armored order-tied cavalry, heavy chariots generally over-armored single entities, or elite shielded armored infantry, get regular hunters. And if not heavily armored shielded, and if not heavily armored shielded, have at least 1 regular hunters for the shield breaker to help regardless. If you are facing general opposition or factions with a lot less raw armor, like beastmen or, frankly, a lot of the troll variants, and skirmish cavalry and so on, recruit javelins in acceptable quantities. They'll fire over your own infantry without any problems at all, and they can survive a bit of bashing that makes it into your missile line. Guard mode can help too. Point being, you're not all that disadvantaged over low-tier infantry like Bleak Swords, and even less if you mix a single regular hunter unit in. But against Dark Riders, you'll be crazy dominant. You do have to get in range of stuff that outranges you, and that's one of the problems with the unit. But stuff trying to shoot you while you're still a decent amount of distance away, it's going to hurt. Javelins firing at somewhat longer ranges makes all kind of cheeky bait tactics work for you so much better, just like the squirrel tactics I mentioned with the Horseman video. In other words, they are best used in tandem, one leading enemies into the loving embrace of the other, then helping from behind or going out to the sides and getting better angles, even if it's only 12 to 15 volleys, even if it's only against infantry. Javelins hurt, and they hurt a lot, especially because they do have that penetration mechanic. You will win entire battles just from decimating the center faster with them, or whittling down the flanks from just behind the infantry. And of course, the morale penalties provided by ranged damage does help. Of course, anti-large missiles provide no solace against a cavalry charge in the face or up the rear, so at absolute minimum, know where you're placing axe and board or long pointy stick units to buy time and keep stuff out of the hunters as much as possible. Within those limitations, and knowing they will have a tough time against the big armored stuff, this unit begs for magical support. Plague of Rust, Armor Sundering from the Famir Bros, Soul Blight, the Withering, combinations thereof. You can do a lot. Even Warp Flame. Flaming Sword of Ruin slaps on magical attack, flaming attack, and bonus base missile damage by plus 30%. You know that number javelins have a lot of? That one. The high irony of this unit is that it is one of the best counter units you can get for a considerable amount of Norsca's own roster, and that Flaming Sword combination wrecks Ice Trolls and Skin Wolves so hard it's funny. You do need something to pin them down long enough though, so get it into your heads that instead of being a scroll, this is a pincushion unit. It's a deceptively meek, loose formation, low-ish range, damage dealer that can do terrible, horrible, very bad and evil things to the right enemies, and even the wrong ones, with enough support. One last thing, stuff tends to break and run from this unit's missiles enough that you want speed and frostbite in your lineup to be able to exploit that somewhere. Ice Wolves being both, so that's an option. Because enemies run away, unless undead and stuff, this may end up being what softens the foe up, but something else does the actual finishing blow. That's fine, you're still winning. Take care, and have fun making big dragons cry.